Welcome back. We're live until 12:30. Still to come, actress Samantha Bond, TV gossip, and the return of 38-stone fat fighter Sharon Fisher.
Now, despite their tight sisterly bond, Joyce, Paula and June Kavanagh each hid a hideous secret from one another for more than 20 years.
All three girls had been raped throughout their childhood at the hands of their own father. It was only after another child had been abused that the sisters finally opened up to one another, and they join us now to share their horrific story. And girls, thank you very much for being here today. This is the book. It's entitled Click, Click, and just the name of the book itself paints such a horrific picture, because this was the sound that your father would make.
Yeah.
This was the summons of you girls. And I guess a lot of people would be wondering why write the book? What was the reason for this?
Partly for our own healing. There was something huge when we prosecuted my dad. That sense that somebody heard us, somebody listened and somebody believed. It made us feel like, I always felt like, Jesus, this needs to be recorded. It was such a huge moment. And there's so many things wrong with that too. But we felt we needed to start writing, and in the writing came a lot more healing than we imagined. So initially we started to write to heal ourselves.
Well, the way you've written the book is obviously, it's your story, but you've been incredibly honest and incredibly frank and incredibly open. I mean, there is, at no point is this softened for the story. This is it's very tough, very heavy read, it's very graphic, yeah.
See, we knew we did a lot of therapy, but we knew we hadn't reached the real healing. We were coping, you know, we were managing, but we knew in order to really make a difference in our lives, we had to go deep. And we used to begin initially just by writing memories, because we all had memories. And we'd come together and we'd read each other's memory, and we'd be more upset at each other's. You always, if you've been in this situation, you minimise your own damage, and it's always more upsetting to listen to somebody else's pain. So we'd get together and we'd read each other's, and we'd cry and we'd discuss it, and we'd challenge each other too. You know, that we felt if you were stepping out, if you started writing, and we felt it was really important to write it in the first person as if it was actually happening. And then you automatically step out of it. Your tenses change when you start writing, because you're trying to remove yourself from it.
As you probably did as a child.
Yeah, but we'd challenge each other and say, look, you just kept stepping out, you have to get in. And we'd have more, I don't know, I mean, there'd be arguments, there'd be tears, but we really had to do the stuff, and it took a long, long time.
To be honest, when you go into a memory as deep as that and you write it in the first person, that's the only time you're actually in a position to let go of the shame and the guilt and realise that it doesn't belong with you. That you actually were innocent, you had nothing to do with it. Because when you've been abused, you actually are conditioned to believe that it is your fault. And you hold all the shame and the guilt, which is why you don't talk about it, why you don't discuss it with anybody, be it friends or family. And it's when you go into the memory and you actually remember it as a child, you are absolutely in a perfect position to let that go.
And you say with him, it was mostly, predominantly about the power.
Oh, absolutely.
And control.
I think sexual abuse is mainly about power. It's very seldom about sex. It does something more in the brain. Sex is just a tool you use to get that power and control.
Well, you are, it's not the 1960s, and you're a family of 10. And Joyce, let's, you know, because you each have your own, as you say, your stories that you've told. In 1961 you were 6, and you say he was clever, a clever man.
Oh, extremely. He wasn't educated, but he was self-educated. He was well-read. He knew something about everything. I mean, to a child, he was just amazing. He knew everything. And, like, it took us a long time to grow out of that. We really believed that. Like, when we heard it this young, that carried through. We carried that through all our lives. We believed he was big, he was strong, he was powerful. And then we witnessed over the years many people trying to confront him, like the police, the council. And he would tell them to get lost, and they did.
And so part of this, sort of, when you'd hear the click, click, and you'd go to him, it was sort of actually time for you to spend time with him, and he'd talk to you, but he would, this kind of this level of almost bribing you in a way. I mean, he sort of said to you about a new bike, and you were 6 years old.
And I thought he was great. He was explaining to me at the time, because he was abusing me, and I obviously was crying. I was very upset, and he took me into town one day in the van, and he was explaining, like, you have this skin that needs to be broken, and once that's done, it'll never hurt again. Now I know it'd make you cringe, but the reality is, I thought, isn't he wonderful? He's explaining this to me. I'm only
And
a
why it's
child.
hurting.
Yeah. And I believed him, and he was going to give me sleeping tablet that night, and then when it worked, I was going to have a bike. I couldn't sleep that night. It was like trying to sleep on a Christmas Eve. I could not sleep. And obviously it didn't work, but the child believes the parent.
You never got the bike.
No.
I mean,
No, I think, in fairness, I think I was around 11 and he did buy a bike.
I say that because it wasn't a case of just not getting the bike. It was really quite vicious the way you didn't get that. He threw you across the room and it was dismissive.
I know. And at the time, my thoughts were, God, I disappointed him. You know, I let him down, and please give me the strength to do what he wants.
And June, with you, I mean, some of the rape was very, very forceful. I mean, at one point, Paula, you went into hospital.
I did. He had actually agreed, which was very unusual for him. He agreed to let me go away on it was like a school trip. He went away for a week, and I'd never been out of the house for a day, never mind a week. And he finally agreed, because that was the way he played you. He'd say yeah, and then he'd say no, and he'd say yeah, and said no. But he'd finally agreed to let me go, and he just wanted to make sure I didn't forget him while I was away. So he viciously raped me that time. And all he kept saying to me was, you won't forget this in a hurry, and you won't forget this while you're away. And he did so much damage that time that my insides kind of fell out.
You had like a prolapse.
Yeah. I didn't know what it was at the time, and I have to say, for years I still didn't know what it was. And of course I had to tell somebody, so I told a sister-in-law, who obviously had to tell my mother, and then she called my father in, and he strapped me with a bandage and kept telling me I'd be fine. And he kept using the fact that I was going away, and he kept saying to me, well, you don't want to disappoint her, like, she really wants to go on her holiday.
Did your mother not question how it had happened?
She didn't know what it was, no more than any of us knew what it was. Yeah. And it's that issue about you knowing something but not accepting that you actually know there's something seriously wrong
here. You went
here.
to the doctor, didn't you?
Yeah.
And the doctor asked you if you'd had a boyfriend.
He said I was with a boy. No, I was too young to be with a boy. I didn't even know what he meant. But while he was asking me the question, my father was standing outside. I think I was 6 or 7. But while he was asking me the question, my father was actually standing outside the cubicle. Yeah. With the curtain, so I wasn't going to say
nothing more said about that. That was done. You had patched up your fix.
Absolutely nothing.
And June 1969. Tell me about the game of Snakes and Ladders.
Oh, that was just typical daily occurrence. You could be out playing, you could be doing anything, and you'd be summoned. And like when he clicked his fingers, it wasn't that you went and he spent time talking with you. When he clicked his fingers, it was to abuse you. The conversation that Joyce had, she was
a miracle.
Yeah, because that wasn't part of it. Yeah. Like he'd click his fingers and you'd freeze and you'd pray to God he didn't want you, because he could just as easily be calling you to get you to change the channel on the television, get him a cup of tea, wash his feet. I mean, he was so controlling. He had a job for everybody, but when those fingers were clicked, it was for abuse. And that was just a typical day for me. We were playing a game, and I was called, and your heart sinks. You've no power, you've no control. You know you have to do it, and it's just awful. There's no way of explaining what it does to you.
The abuse stopped at different ages for different people. What was the reason for that, and what age did it get to when it finally finished?
I was just 17 and I had a first period, and I thought it was wonderful because I didn't know what a period was, and all my friends had periods. And at the time, you couldn't even walk into the chemist for sanitary towels. You'd be mortified. They were pushed into a brown bag and hidden. But I used to go in and get my friends, and because I didn't know what they were, I used them and put them around my ear, play nurse. So that's how innocent we were. And when I got my period, he just stopped abusing me. I didn't know why. He knew, obviously, I could become pregnant and he wasn't going to be caught that way. But I had no understanding, none whatsoever.
At what point did you all discover that it wasn't individual, that it had been happening to you as a group?
We were well into our 20s.
Yeah. But in writing the book, we actually come to understand, when initially we all believed, we thought, we didn't know about each other, we thought it was only us it was happening to. But when we began to write the book and we wrote pieces about when we'd hear the fingers clicking and you'd freeze and you hope it's not you. So who did you think it was going to be? Yeah. So we actually did know, but it's on a level. There's any household where there's abuse, sexual abuse or otherwise going on, there are different levels of knowing. And there are certain unwritten rules that go on in a house, like you don't enter a room without making a sound. That was never explained to you. You just picked up on it. You knew it wasn't safe.
And a lot of that was you didn't want to know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Or witness or see. So that's why that behaviour would have developed without you realising you developed that behaviour for that reason.
Well, when it was discussed amongst the family, your mother, who went to her grave mortified that she hadn't spotted this and she had absolutely no idea what was going on, he checked himself into a psychiatric hospital because he'd gone in there voluntarily. There was no prosecution.
No.
I mean, you'd already spoken to a priest, and the priest, and no action had been taken when you went to
The priest tried to talk my mother into taking him back and said he
He's
was
an old
harmless.
man. He's fine.
The
He's
family
fine. It
doctor
won't
told
happen
my
again.
mother.
This is
that-
much later. How old would he be then?
He was
Oh, he's-
69.
yeah.
He was
Yeah.
69.
But then he got a job in a school.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
was
that's
the-
when you
that was
decided
the
this is enough,
clincher, yeah.
because anything could be going
And
on.
a priest got him the job teaching arts and crafts to the kids in the school, having known the whole story.
What happened to you?
Yeah.
You didn't want to prosecute at first, did you? I mean, because there's still that hold of him being your
we
father.
were completely brainwashed and we were conditioned, and there is a nobody will ever understand the bond between parents and children, and ultimately every child wants to be loved and accepted
it's
by
the
the parent
ultimate betrayal.
regardless. And that's it, exactly. People can't understand how you could still love somebody. You can call it whatever you like. We don't understand it, but the bond is there, and you always want to be loved and approved.
Well, in May 1990, Kevin Kavanagh was jailed for 7 years after pleading guilty to 94 charges, including rape, incest and indecent assault. The judge declared it was the most disturbing and upsetting case that he'd ever had to deal with. He never said sorry to you. And when he was released in May 1985, he came out. He had no family left, and you say that was his part of his punishment was that he had no
I think that was
family.
the only time he would have felt anything, but it would have been all about feeling it for himself. It
Yes.
certainly wouldn't have been
Poor me.
it was all about what we did to him then. It wasn't about what he did.
Well, he died of a heart attack a year after he was released for good behaviour in 1996. And Paulie, you were the only one that went to the funeral, weren't you?
I know, I did. I was in therapy at the time, and I had this thing in my head. It was all about getting closure and letting go, and this would be the final. And because I never confronted my father in court or anything, and I had never physically stood in front of him and confronted him, and I kind of thought this would solve it for me, this would fix it for me, but it actually
It didn't.
really didn't.
But you have wonderful families, you have
seem so
great
strong.
relationships. As a bond, you're incredibly strong. And you're working together as much as you possibly can to get over such a terrible thing. What do you feel now if someone does that?
Would break your fucking hand.
I
Sorry.
apologise for that. But I understand completely how
Myself
you
and
feel.
June used to work as waitress, and if anyone ever clicked their finger, you've no idea what we did.
Yes, I
They didn't get
understand.
served.
Click Click is the name of the book.
Thank
That
you.
was
Thank
Click
you
Click
so
was his
much.
signal story of abuse. Three sisters, shattered Irish childhood. Joyce, June, and Paula's story. Thank you.
Thank
you
you.
so much for that. Absolutely amazing. And once again, I will apologise for that language.
Well,
I
if
think you can understand.
Yes, I hope you can. If you've been a victim of abuse or you've been affected by Paula, June and Joyce's story and need details of helplines, then please go to our website, itv.com/thismorning. We'll be back after the break.